Time is speeding up, chaos is shifting into a new level, and we feel the pull to unlock the mysteries of the universe. Timeless spiritual wisdom offers the point of stability to navigate these times and to open our greatest potential. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the fun and knowledge of visionary best-selling authors Shri and Kira as they explore these mysteries and invite your higher love to come forward. And now, here are Shri and Kira.
Welcome to Explore the Mysteries. I am wisdom teacher Shri Ram Ka.
And I am Master Lady Kira Ra, and we are delighted to spend this journey, this moment, right now with you.
You know, Kira and I have been active in the public arena for the last 18 years.
Going on 19.
Going on 19. And our passion has been indeed exploring consciousness, exploring the mysteries. We have written several best-selling books in the spiritual metaphysical arena, and we are delighted to share this wisdom with you today.
You know, it's exciting because we arrived at the forefront of the higher consciousness movement due to everything that's gone on over the past 18 years, going on 19 now. And what is most beautiful is that we are here right now, that together we are expanding. And so each week here on Explore the Mysteries, this is our opportunity, whether you're familiar with Shri and I, whether you're just tuning in for the first time, what we are going to be doing each and every week is really focusing in on those bigger, larger questions, taking time to dissect them. And remember, your questions are welcome. Make sure if you want us to read your questions on the show, send them to guest, G-U-E-S-T, guest at Shri and Kira Radio. That's guest at Shri and Kira Radio. And we do our best to include as many of your questions as we can. And again, you want to be visiting shriandkira.com to catch up on everything that's happening in the world of the self-ascension of consciousness. And you know, Shri, I want to give a big shout out because we are so grateful that we are now being carried by the AM/FM 24/7 network. I just want to give a big shout out to AM/FM 24/7.
Yes.
Also over to iHeart. Thank you. We are so grateful to be here as well. And to all of there's so many affiliates. Plus we are back at onenesstalkradio.com as well. Thank you all for joining us. It is a gift to be with you.
Absolutely. And it's because you are here listening that we want to say welcome.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
And all those wonderful things.
Whether it was sheer curiosity or heart's calling, doesn't matter because you're here. Let's dive into this conversation.
Well, and I am loving it because tonight's conversation is a conversation that really can get complex, sometimes almost too complex. And what we're diving into this evening is consciousness. At its core, what is consciousness and why does it even matter? What's really the deeper thing that's going on? And, you know, so many people, Shri, it is really quite beautiful. There's so many people who throw around the word consciousness,
yes.
It's used in so many different perspectives. And one of the things that would be kind of fun is we thought, okay, we're going to start with the basics. Here's what, if you go to the dictionary, right, if you look it up, right, if you type in consciousness definition, right, here's what you're going to get. All right? You want me to read it? Okay,
yeah,
here's
sure.
what you're going to get. So here it is. What is consciousness? Definition. It is the state of being awake and aware of one's surroundings. So, okay, I can get that, right? That's there's three here.
That's basic.
So I think that's kind of good. I think we're all kind of there, right? It's a state of being. Yeah. But it's a state of being awake and aware. I want you to just kind of hold on to that little area right there. Okay. And what's interesting is here, they're saying of your surroundings.
Yes.
Right? So it's of your surroundings, which of course we'll talk about. Your surrounding is also even your own self, right? Now here's the next good old-fashioned definition of consciousness. The awareness or perception of something specifically by a person. I find that fascinating because in its own definition, it's limiting consciousness to humans.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's one way of looking at it that we've seen in the world and held by different cultures at different times.
Absolutely. And I just found it fascinating that it was not just the awareness or perception of something. It was the awareness or perception of something by a person.
Yeah.
So that's also a very limiting connotation. So just inviting you to expand a little bit. All right, you ready? Here comes the third one.
Okay.
The fact of awareness by the mind of itself and the world. Let me read that one again. You want me to read that one again? The fact, I love that too. It says you got to love the way they're saying this, right? The fact of awareness by the mind. And I love that they're establishing awareness as a fact, because boy, are we going to explore that, right? The fact of awareness by the mind of itself and the world, meaning I am aware of my awareness, right? This is really powerful, because this is really the first innuendo of existence beyond this one realm.
Yeah.
You know, and this is all, guys, this is not woo-woo, whatever. This is literally, I went to Google and said, give me the definition of consciousness.
So our friends over at the Webster clan.
Yeah, exactly. Whatever clan is doing that dictionary.
Yeah.
And so, Sri, I really want to dive into this, because I want you guys just take a minute, because this is one of those mind-bending, mind-expanding shows with so much revelatory information. But over the past 19 years, what Sri and I have learned, what we have lived, what we teach, what we have had the blessing of pouring through us, and really is, I'm going to offer to you, if I had to offer you a definition of consciousness, let's try this one on. And then we're going to go back through all of them, and this is quite a rousing show. You ready?
Here we go.
So consciousness is the basis of activating our ascended or mastery or higher, whatever word you want to give it, presence, into awareness as the evolutionary expansion of our limited perceptions.
Now, there's some depth there. Let's read that again.
Okay, let's read that again. So what is consciousness? This is the Sri and Kira definition of consciousness. Consciousness is the basis of activating our ascended presence or our mastery presence or our higher presence into awareness as the evolutionary expansion of our limited perceptions. So in order to really play with that definition of consciousness, you would also really have to be awake to an experience that's outside the limitations of the mind.
Yeah. And the one thing I would like to do to really help engage everybody is to recognize that consciousness evolves.
Yes.
And so let's just play with this for a little moment, and then we'll come back to these definitions.
Well, and you know, I gotta jump in here with my friend Einstein.
Okay.
Right? Because part of the reason why it matters, right? It was like, what is consciousness and why does it matter? The reason it matters, and I really am digging that, you know, Einstein, all these years later, is being like irrefutably proven. All of the theories, everything. And my personal favorite of many favorites, but my absolute top of the list, if I had to pick one, is Einstein's famous quote of, "You are unable to solve problems at the level of consciousness that created them." And this is why it matters. We are at a moment right now on our planet where everything is distracting us. Everything is calling us away. Everything is saying, you know, go here, do this, believe this, see this, do this. And it's at a point where many, many people are afraid. Yeah. Many, many people are freaking out, and we're distracted. And that distraction pull is massive, right? It's a massive, massive pull. So what's our way out of it? Literally, it's by the evolutionary expansion of our consciousness, which is why this moment has come forward.
Absolutely. And this is not a brainiac discussion. This is relevant to you no matter who you are, what you're doing. And I want to there's a few little concepts, though, we need to kick around in order to have a fruitful conversation. And the first one is, the consciousness of a goldfish is not equal to the consciousness of a human, is it?
Although I don't know about the attention spans anymore.
The attention span is getting similar, yeah.
We'll talk about that in a moment, yeah.
But really, let's just tongue-in-cheek a little bit.
Okay.
The consciousness of a goldfish or your pet poodle is not the same, not the same as the human.
And neither is the perspective. You know, there's so many quantifiers on that.
And it's interesting because there is a difference between being self-aware and being conscious. And this is where the human X factor comes in. A goldfish is to some degree aware of itself and aware of its surroundings and knows when it wants to eat something.
Well, you know, I got to say, I had a goldfish tank for many, many years with really big goldfish.
Big fat ones.
They would come to me. They would know when I was home.
Yeah.
So I can, you know, it was very interesting. I really got to witness that aspect of they are aware of their surroundings, very much so.
Yeah. And so animals that have a cerebral cortex, for the most part, are self-aware to some degree.
Yeah.
However, are they aware of the context or the world they find themselves in? And this is where we start to get into the evolution of consciousness. Human beings go through a growth process. When you're a child, it's all about me, 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 and your emotions, and you're discovering the world and touching your body and eating the dirt and doing what you do to explore and cultivate a higher order of consciousness.
Absolutely.
And so what happens when we suddenly become aware that we're aware? When we become conscious that we are a self-aware being.
Well, and this is a whole show that we're going to be doing on spiritual awakening, because oftentimes the first thing that happens when we become aware that we're aware is because it flies in the face of everything we've ever been taught, and because it expands us. For many, being aware can be a frightening first moment.
Yeah, because what happens then is the context for our self-identity shifts.
Right.
You're no longer immersed in the me, whatever name you call yourself, and you're going through school and all of that. It's all me. It's all my personality and that. But when we become conscious of ourselves as an aware being, all of a sudden we take in the fact there's other people, there's other constituents to the context. It's like, wait a minute, I have to behave a certain way in church, a certain way in school, a certain way in my family, a certain way with my friends. Those are different contexts, are they not?
Yes.
Yes. and so that's how this self-awareness gets developed. When we shift contexts, all of a sudden we pay attention.
Well, I think we should talk about that and like how that really pays in your life. Like what is the experience in your life when you knew that was happening, Sri?
Well, for me, and I think for many people, it happened in the difference between my home environment and the school environment.
Right, remember that?
That was the first kind of wake-up call to consciousness.
Right.
Of certain rules are permitted here, certain behaviors are permitted there. But it really got rolling around the adolescent period, when all of a sudden the hormones are running and the kids are trying to be themselves separate of mom and dad, to have their own identity, their own world. So look at the tension of that.
Yeah.
Through the tension in their inner world, they begin to see two different contexts. There's me, the child, and then there's me, the me, and my private dreams.
Well, this is when we first get to witness. We're not aware that we're witnessing. There's that word again, awareness, because during the second half of the show today, we're going to be talking a lot about what awareness does and how it calls out your expansion. And it actually happens through what's known as a pyramid of spiritual awakening. And we're going to be talking all about that in the second half of the show. And the reason I wanted to kind of seed that and let everybody know that was coming is because it is in that moment where when you begin to individualize. Yes. Right? When you begin to say, okay, I know there's more, I'm feeling more, I'm experiencing more. It's actually at the very beginning stage of the expansion of our consciousness, because we are looking beyond the one facet, the one aspect of that which we are.
Yeah, and I think many people they hit this moment where they go, who am I really?
Right.
What am I?
Right. What am I? Why am I here? All the big questions
why am I
come
here?
up. Yeah.
And those perennial philosophical or metaphysical questions start to bubble, and this kind of existential anxiety comes forward, because we begin to awaken to a deeper level of truth. We're not just Bobby or Susie. You're not just the personality that was massaged throughout your childhood. You're more than that. And there comes a moment when we become conscious that we don't really know who we are. At least we can't really satisfy that kind of yearning to have a deeper order of understanding.
Well, and this leads to a lot of things. Like, I'm thinking about your life, Sri, and I really think it would be good to share for both of us too, that, how many of you have come to that moment? And I'm thinking about your moment when you had been a very successful businessman, you had had an incredible life experience, and here you were at a moment where everything should be, theoretically, you were just getting close to 50, where everything should just be kind of like smoothing out, and you took a dramatic turn. You single-handed that boat, you went up into the wilds of Alaska, and that was a moment of expansion. So I think we should talk about that, because that was a great moment of awareness of, you know, it's one of those things, guys, where you're not even aware of what you're not aware of, and how do you find out, right?
Yeah, and I like sharing what I think are very common human experiences,
Absolutely.
and I'll share some of mine here in a
Please
moment.
do.
But I just want to track here a little further. When is it that we start asking these perennial questions?
I think it depends on each person. Some ask earlier than others.
They do, and
Yeah.
I think it's very common for this level of awareness, this recontextualizing who I am and where I fit in.
Right.
Kind of happens when kids leave home. You know, there's a lot that happens in the college years.
Yeah, again, it happens at the teen years, as we talked about.
And there's one level there, and there's another stepping stone.
Yeah.
And so what I'm wanting to bring forward is that this is a natural process of
Right.
expanding the context of who you are as a being. And when we begin to expand, we have to include our world.
Yeah.
You know, Mother Earth and the animals and creatures of the earth. We start including other people, and we start including other societies and religions and races. And, you know, our world just starts getting bigger. And at some point, many of us say, wait a minute, that's too much.
Well,
know,
and
we
so
wanna
you said
slow
it was
that
too
down.
much. You said it was too much, and you did. I did too. I mean, I'm happy to share my story, but you know, so when you said it was too much, what happened? How did you dive into this?
Well, I was very much a highly functioning, conforming member of society.
There it is.
Okay, and what I mean by
That's the consciousness stopper right there.
so what that meant is I got my college degree, I got my first job, I did well at it, and I moved on to the next position and got my promotion, fell in love, got married, had my children, etc. I followed the path that I believed was normal and wholesome, and that the path I was reared in from my parents and from the society that we identified with.
Right.
And so, very normal. You know, very much saying, "Oh yeah, we got you figured out."
Now I want to insert. I don't enjoy the word normal, so I'm going to insert the word traditional.
Very traditional is better.
Traditional, very almost stereotypical. He was very much like almost Ozzie Harriet kind of thing.
Well, I was just thinking that. Because I'm of the age where those shows, Leave It to Father and the Beaver and all of that.
Leave It to Beaver,
Leave It to
and
Beaver.
Father Knows Best.
Father's Know Best. That's the one. Anyway, even the Cosby Show. You know, all of this stuff. You know, offered America glimpses to this is what a family's supposed to be. You know, and all
I'm
of that.
Brady Bunch generation.
There it is.
Yeah.
So, you know, and it's good to be able to reflect.
And so when you got to that moment where even your family could not understand why you were leaving, he did the unthinkable. He said, I'm going to become myself. My consciousness is evolving. I'm going to expand. And you had the courage and the guts and whatever else it took to say, I know I need to follow this. And so what I'm curious of, and I'm sure our audience is as well, is how did that awareness come up in you? How did you get the action to expand beyond that and say, okay, I'm going to go get on this boat and single-handedly navigate the inside passage of Alaska and go find myself?
Well, I got to give you one more sentence of setup, and then I'm going to tell you. I'm going to respond.
Okay, thanks.
All right. When we are immersed in our world, and I was immersed in my world, there comes a point where we wonder, is this all that is? That's what came up for me. It's like, I got a good beat on this. I'm stable. I'm productive. Everything is going according to, quote, plan. Yet somehow inside my heart, I was not fulfilled. I did a good job of doing and performing in the way that I was trained or reared to perform.
It's training.
And
It's
I did,
conditioning.
and all of that, and I did a good job. But I just, each passing year, I was feeling more like, oh, I'm missing the boat. There's something missing here. And I began to read self-help books and began to explore and do a little journaling. And the more I did that, the more I realized that I knew nothing about the inner depths of myself and my soul.
Breathe that in. How many of us, I remember at the epitome of my career, I remember a beautiful woman who came up to me and she said, you know, that is such a beautiful suit you're wearing. And I was very, very, very thin at the time. And she said to me, but there's nobody inside of it.
Ooh.
And I thought she was talking about my body. I did not, at the time, I was not even aware that she was really talking about this, the me that I am. And it was a very profound awakening. And so you were kind of at that moment of,
I was.
who am I?
Yeah, I was. And I hung out on the anxiety of that for a few
Right?
years,
Yeah.
going, wait a minute, what am I doing? What is the meaning in this?
Well, this is anxiety is lack of clarity. So when you're in anxiety, that's exactly what you were doing. Your consciousness is unable to inspire. So your lack of clarity does what? It makes you anxious, and it really helps anchor self-doubt and fear.
And my first step was to say, okay, I want to explore some religions. I'm looking for the deeper piece, the deeper answers. And I did that. I'm not going to comment on all the various
No, but he's
faiths.
a definite explorer.
However, I became the assistant pastor of a church as I was moving forward in this, seeking this spiritual peace, this foundation. And even then, I didn't have it. It got a little better because I was in the arena of the mystical, of the energy that is available to all of us, and beginning to trust the universe in a new way. And so I finally got to this point of going, I don't want this endless life of falling short from the true peace, the true knowing. You know, there was just a moment inside I said, I could go.
You knew it.
I could say I could go the rest of my life like this, and everyone around me would say, "There's a good boy. There's a good man. You know, I'm an accepted member of society." But inside, I knew something was missing, and I couldn't quite get it, what it was. So, time to just cut loose from all of the conditioned path. I had enough awareness at that time, and that's a magic word.
It is the magic word.
I had enough awareness to know that everything in my life, meaning my relationships with friends, my relationships at work, my wife, my church, everything in my life has an energetic contributor to holding you in a status quo.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And what'd you learn, Sri?
And what I learned was that if I wanted to go beyond the status quo, I needed to separate from all of those cues and conditions, at least for a short period of time, maybe longer. I didn't know. I just knew I needed to separate myself from the conditioning that was keeping my consciousness stuck at one level.
Yet you had a propulsion. There was a propulsion inside of you because many, many people think about what you're talking about. Many, many people fantasize about it. Many, many people wish it, but they don't take the action. And so what was it inside of you that offered you that propulsion?
The more I explored the spiritual mysteries, reading spiritual texts, meditating, singing, doing some chanting, doing the things that are spiritual practices, and there's many beautiful spiritual practices out in the world. The more I did that, the more I felt I was coming closer to the gnosis, the knowing of my true self. And so I felt like I was just scratching the surface of something, and that something was not in the traditional world, the conventional world. It was outside of that norm.
So what it's sounding like to me is you were applying, there is a 3-step process to being able to hold open your consciousness, and that's what I'm hearing from you. And those 3 steps are steadfast commitment, not just commitment, steadfast commitment. Get committed to the process. You were committed to consciousness evolution. This was first and foremost for you. So he took that steadfast commitment. And then the second piece of that is focused awareness, where you were so focused on that. And that's where you started looking at all these other things.
Well, and focused awareness means bring your awareness by choice to that where you want to go.
Which is the 3rd step, complete trust.
And trust in that, yes. Because when we're busy, quote, making a living or surviving, a lot of our sacred life energy and our attention is in the survival mode, not the expansion mode.
Well, and this is what I want to talk about. So I want to talk about the victim triangle, because within the victim triangle, what happens is that every single being is in the victim triangle. We are born into it. It is where consciousness conforms. And the way that it works, and the reason that so many dogmatic traditions flourish, is because the victim triangle is literally the 3 energies of victim, abuser, and rescuer. And I'm listening that as your consciousness was shifting, Sri, as you were moving, what happened was that as we are in this victim triangle, which means that we are always, and this is how do you know you're in it? Blame, lack of responsibility, poor me syndrome, why me syndrome, who's going to rescue me? Or conversely, you're the rescuer. You're rescuing everybody because you're terrified to look at your own victim consciousness. And there's always somebody to blame. That's the abuser.
Well, the victim triangle is the classic understanding of conventional consciousness.
Right. And I want to say one more thing before we go there. And because of while we're in talking about your experience, what you did was you were literally living the ascended presence of that, the higher presence of that, which is when the victim transforms to the teacher. You became your own teacher. When the rescuer transcends into the healer, you are now one of the most brilliant healers on the planet, but you began by healing yourself.
Yeah,
and when
true.
the abuser becomes the mentor, and you were able to really step aside from the fractured pieces of that victim triangle and really say yes to you. And I really love your story and enjoy how it really models that even if we don't know it, that at some point we must ascend, expand our consciousness from victim, abuser, and rescuer to that teacher, healer, mentor.
And though that transition happens both in the inner world, how you talk to yourself,
yes,
what you think about yourself, how you nurture yourself.
Right.
Are you mentoring and healing yourself, or are you judging, abusing, and then periodically you rescue yourself,
Well, and this is really what it's all about, is in order to expand our consciousness, in order to really, and remember, problems are never solved at the level of consciousness that created them. So if you really want to solve problems, it's really about raising your consciousness and helping you break free of a single lens vision, right? I always giggle, Sri and I live in the Andes Mountains. I'm always like, come down here and visit us and come sit up here in the mountains and then get the bigger view, right?
Well, yes.
That's what ascended consciousness is. It's the broader view of your own experience. This isn't about judgment. And the way it begins, which is what you did, is you got to love yourself enough to lift out of the victim consciousness. Victim is consciousness. It is victim consciousness. And if you are carrying victim consciousness, everything around you will line up to that. It is the core of poverty consciousness, right? It's all about aspects of consciousness.
Well, and victim consciousness is epitomized by the belief that there's something wrong with me.
Inherently.
That I just think that I'm flawed.
Right.
And it feeds the whole concept of original sin, which is I'm flawed in some fashion. And when we really work or organize our life around that sense of lack, then we spend our whole lifetime trying to fill in, trying to find things that will either numb us or cope with that anxiety of believing there's something wrong.
And this is how we ascend through the pyramid of our own spiritual awakening. And we have so much to share about this and so much to expand upon. This is a powerful show. We're going to take 2 minutes. We're going to be right back. Hang with us. Refill that mug, whatever's in it, because we got a lot of show to go.
Be right back.
Welcome to the Self-Ascension Classroom, affordable and beautiful home study for your mystical journey. Imagine the gift of studying everything that you've ever wanted at home and on your time. Yes, it is possible, and there is so much to choose from as you dive into your home study experience. Remember that with every moment you spend studying this gift, you ignite your divinity. Imagine the mysteries of the Tohil and the crystalline clarity and radiant abundance of Vesa, a mastery balancing technique and certification process, and then cosmic life regression. Travel the universe and remember, allow yourself the gift of navigating the inner matrix. This beautiful Ascended Mastery program of the Violet Flame will take you to places you may not have dared to dream to go, and then you will rediscover the true gift of your divine nature. Yes, the time is now to study the ancient mysteries, and it's so easy to begin. Discover the Self-Ascension Classroom only at ShriandKira.com. That's ShriandKira.com. Namaste.
Welcome back. We're delighted that you are here. And today we're exploring the mystery of consciousness.
And hey, if you're just joining us, welcome. Glad you can hitch a ride on this incredible train of consciousness that we are diving into as we explore the mysteries even more. I am Master Lady Kira Ra, joined of course by my amazing husband, wisdom teacher, Sri Ram Ka. And Sri, right before the break, we were diving into how everything is really consciousness,
Yes.
Poverty consciousness, all of these different consciousnesses that are around us, our spiritual consciousness, our emotional consciousness affects everything.
Absolutely.
It really does. And we were diving into how we move through consciousness. And I just want to remind all of you that as we opened up the show earlier, I want to read this to you again. So what we're inviting, what this show invites is for you to expand your consciousness at all levels. And what a better way to start than to really be looking at how our lives are impacted by this. And so I want to remind you that over the 18 years that Sri and I have been out there in the public realm, really at the forefront of this higher consciousness movement, what we have learned, and I want you to just kind of breathe this one in, is that, and you can go look up the Google definition consciousness, and it's in the first half of the show if you want to listen again. But here's what Sri and I have learned, that consciousness is actually the basis of activating our ascended presence or our mastery presence or our higher presence into awareness as the evolutionary expansion of our limited perceptions.
Yes.
So I want you to really breathe that in, because in the end, it's actually about breaking free from that which seeks to hold us. And, both Sri and I have really, if you've ever read our book, Sacred Union, The Journey Home, and if you haven't, read it. I don't know why you haven't. You will learn that it takes a inner moment of propulsion is really the word.
Absolutely.
And that's what we were talking about right before the break.
Yeah, and I was sharing some pieces of my own story.
Exactly.
And I want to just kind of wrap that up with a little more sharing, because this is where it gets fun. I think
it's always fun, don't you think?
We can all relate to those moments in our lives where we wonder, is this all there is? Is this all I am? And those questions.
Right.
And actually behind those questions, there is an angst, a bit of an anxiety. We're not fully at peace with ourselves and the world. And that's where I was kept coming back to, is that sense of no matter what I did, I never fully felt at peace in the world. And that's what was driving me to explore. And so as I was sharing, the context, when you widen your context, we get greater understanding and find greater meaning in our lives. And I'm sure a lot of people first widen their context by going to a different town or a different school. What happens when you travel internationally? You begin to widen your context.
Or live internationally like we have now for the past 12 years.
So my process of having been a successful businessman and have done, I was a high-functioning member of society. I just said, I'm taking a break. That was my deliberate action to explore this. And I got on my sailboat, I provisioned it, and I was in Seattle, Washington at the time, and I said, I'm going to Alaska alone up the Inside Passage. And so I was kind of shaking in my boots when I did this. But
you did it.
And I did it because I trusted something inside myself. I didn't know I was trusting at the moment. At the moment, I just said, I'm going to do this. and then at night, when I was all alone in the boat and it's bouncing on the water, I'm going, what have I done? I'm all alone out here. And when the wind would blow and the rain would fall and the storms, and it was both exhilarating to say, I'm safe, to be able to feel safe in the face of this adversarial energy, but also to notice there was this part of me that was lonely. And this was where my consciousness really began to develop. I noticed that I was experiencing loneliness. I didn't say I am lonely. I said, I'm noticing loneliness.
Now, this is that awareness.
That's where
that is when we're witnessing the witness, essentially. And that's a grand piece of awareness.
When we begin to transcend the immersion of our current experience, and be the neutral witness of the one who is really involved in fear, involved in passion, whatever it is, when we can witness the one that's involved, we have gained the spiritual gateway the context that is beyond this physical moment, beyond the doors of perception, because your perception limits your experience.
Exactly.
And so there's lots of lessons and discussions that can evolve from this. But to bring my story a little bit more to closure for today is that during these many weeks that I was alone, my process deepened rapidly.
Yeah.
I began to do a whole life review. I began to see myself from the moment of my birth to the moment of my current age. I began to look at all the experiences. I cried and cried for all the missed opportunities and the people I'd hurt. I delighted in the fact that I was a survivor and that I was out here alone and I was doing something that many people dream about but they never do. And I could delight that I was exploring my world and my universe. And then the more I began to delight in the exploration of consciousness from a place of love, to just be able to say, this is wonderful, the more peace I felt.
Yes.
And so this is a clue that I want to share with all of you. When we begin to not take our life so personally, that is, when our consciousness becomes more ascended and we become the observer of the one who is aware, we gain a freedom and a connection to divine guidance, however we may understand that.
Ooh, there it is.
And all of a sudden, that grand fabric of reality
Woo, we're getting out there.
becomes connected to your consciousness.
Wow.
And now your life takes on a whole different flavor. It's like, this is an adventure.
Well, and I got to jump in because what you're really also saying is, and this is when the ego stops controlling.
Exactly.
Because the ego and consciousness cannot cohabitate and both expand. They can cohabitate for a very, very long time. However, the ego, we always giggle, the ego's a 2-year-old trying to drive the car. And the ego is your servant. And it is when you're experiencing high anxiety, when you're experiencing fear, when you are in self-doubt, when you are absolutely stuck and you don't know what to do, that is because the ego is a small child and it doesn't know what to do. This is, again, one of the greatest cases for consciousness, because your consciousness is infinitely filled with the wisdom. And the blessing is that when we do what you've done, when we make that moment, when we move forward, think about all of the space that's cleared out of your congested highway of the mind that can be receiving divine inspiration constantly.
Yes.
This is what is known as the law of instantaneous manifestation. And I want you to breathe that in, because the law of instantaneous manifestation is that alchemical transformation of the coal into the gold. It is what so many have alluded to. It's what you've read in all the ancient texts. It's the law of instantaneous manifestation that actually Einstein even talked about this, that we are each capable of producing when we are actually able to have our awareness come forward into the recognition that we are not this body, that we are a spiritual being, that we are energy, that we are just a frequency of energy that has been toned down, that has been brought down so densely that we created this beautiful body of form. And I recognize that this is kind of the beginning leap. However, what's so wonderful about it is that each of the experiences of our life right now are what brings us to that divine moment of remembering, because it's really just a remembrance at the end of the day, is it not?
Well, it is. And yet we have to feel it, know the truth of our essence in order to finally be able to really trust the universe and trust ourselves as an evolving spiritual being. Now, what I'm saying, when I say know the truth of our essence, I'm referring to what most people call the soul, that we have a deeper level of truth that is beyond the superficial perceptual reality.
And you know it. You know it. You're listening to this show because deep within you, it's been talking to you often, right?
And I don't want to be one to say, I'm going to define that for you, because then I'm going to be working with your mind.
And we limit it.
And you're going to limit it to one perceptual thing.
Exactly.
Instead,
just like that definition of consciousness I read at the beginning of the show tonight.
Yeah, instead we need to do something, a spiritual practice, visit an ashram or a monastery, or take a beautiful vacation in some way, or in my case,
inspire yourself.
To disconnect from the pattern that would reinforce one level of consciousness, disconnect from it, and connect to just something wider, deeper, different, so that you learn through the contrast, the different contexts. You begin to find out who is the you that had two different experiences. One experience in meditation, or one experience at the ashram, one experience in society. And you begin to then really savor the individual that you are as a being who is having and calling to themselves experiences.
Now, I want to jump in here because as you say, okay, I think I'm ready to do more with this. I think I'm ready to expand more of this. One of the things that becomes really important, and we're going to talk about the spiritual pyramid, the pyramid of spiritual awakening right here in just a moment, because it's all about levels of consciousness. But the most important thing is that what are you doing right now to give yourself the gift of supporting your expansion? And one of the things you can do, and with all my heart and soul I encourage you to do, is to go right now to the app store of whatever device you're using. Apple, Android, it doesn't matter. Tablet, pad, phone, wherever you live in the world, doesn't matter. Get into your store and get the app Spiritual Mastery with Sri and Kira. All right. Spiritual Mastery with Sri and Kira. Or just type in Sri, S-R-I-A-N-D, Kira, K-I-R-A. Or just type in Spiritual Mastery. It's a free app. Download it on your phone. Every single day, you get a moment of inspiration. Every week, you're offered a practice. And this is what Sri is just talking about. Simple practices that if you just offer yourself, is your consciousness worth even 2 to 3 minutes a day? Yeah. Right? If you can say yes to that, download this app and give yourself the gift. Simultaneously, inside of that app, my beloved husband, Sri Ramka, teaches you a breath practice. And this is free. It's all part of the free app. This will assist you because our body and the energy that is sustaining our body seek to be in perfect union. This is what the sacred union of the being is about. And in order to really call in that oneness, and I just want to share that, one of the gifts Sri and I offer is the visible, tangible, and those of you that have been with us over the past 18 years have witnessed this, reverse aging, continued vitality, moving through what people would consider to be horrible and life-threatening diseases. We both had our own moments with those experiences. And yet the vitality, the radiation, the reverse aging, all anchors as our consciousness adapts outside of the perceptions. Now, let's talk about that. Let's go to the Pyramid of Spiritual Awakening, shall we?
Sure.
Because this is really such a powerful, powerful gift to really give yourself the understanding of. And what it is that imagine a pyramid, right? And this pyramid, so the pyramid has, let's just say 4 layers, like a layer cake, right? So you take that pyramid and you split it into 4 layers. Well, at the very beginning, we are born into density consciousness. Now, this is what Einstein's talking about, that we are all energy, but just that our vibration has been so lowered, our harmonic frequency has just been lowered to create matter. That's dense. That's what density consciousness is. It is an alignment with matter. Thereby, it's all about me.
And so one of the key things about consciousness is, where do you identify?
Exactly.
And so in density consciousness is very much about the me. And we see ranges of me. We see people who have kind of balanced egos and people who are completely narcissistic. And those people are in the range of density consciousness, because the preoccupations in density consciousness are really fear-based.
Almost 100%. It's all about
fear.
It's,
where's my money? Where's my partner?
Where's my money? Where's my honey, baby?
And how do I get my power and my
safety?
safety?
And how can I take it from another?
Oh, there's that
right?
too.
Because it's all about that power. It's about fear, anxiety, safety, power, sex. It's all of the things of the senses, which is why our vibration came into such a dense frequency to begin with so that our senses could even recognize it. So it's what we're born into. It is the consciousness that you are experiencing, and it is through all of those experiences and the polarizations that consciousness first evolves into, it's really just another layer of density, but it's actually an evolution. And this evolution is known as spiritual activism. And spiritual activism is a very powerfully charged energy. And let's talk about that.
Well, first off, the moment we begin to recognize that there are other beings or other groups out there that are influencing our experience,
go ahead.
We begin to say, wait a minute, I need to get involved here.
But I want to put this caveat in. It's still a density consciousness experience because the me feels safer aligning with others that feel or believe the exact same way. So while this is an amazing growth in your consciousness, it's also a self-limiting belief system that goes from the me to the us. However, that us has the judgment of my us is better than your us, and either you agree with us or you don't need to be. Spiritual activism is actually the most dangerous level of consciousness, and it's where our planet is stuck right now.
Spiritual activism carries with it the belief that something is wrong and needs to be fixed out there.
That others are wrong and you are right, and you have others around you supporting your rightness.
And that one of the payoffs of spiritual activism is we get this group support.
Right?
So whether
it's where polarization is bred.
It's my clan, my group, my politics, my religion, whatever it is, we have our group support that makes us feel safe and comfortable, and we are opposed to something out there. Yeah. And so this is a step up in consciousness because
it actually is evolution.
It's not just pure narcissism.
Right. No, it says there is a greater.
And some activistic causes have a greater unity factor or wholesomeness or balance, and others are very limited and personal, but leave that alone. What happens is we evolve through this activistic layer, and we call it spiritual activism because it engages our beliefs of what's right and wrong.
And it's an evolution.
And it's out of the pure me focus into trying to do something better for my group. Right. And so there is a heart connection in the activism.
Well, and that's where it brings us, is that here's the blessing, right? So the blessing of this beautiful experience of spiritual activism is that not only does it bring us into an us focus, which is an expansion, it also is the energy that will open and ignite your heart if you are ascending through it. Meaning you can move from density consciousness into spiritual activism and just stay there and just be stuck in what I would call, if you know the chakra system, the third chakra, which is the chakra of power, because it gives you a certain power, but you can only go so far with it because your safety is found with this one group, and then your judgments come up. There's a lot of judgment that's in spiritual activism. However, the more that you really dive in, what happens is that your consciousness starts igniting your heart. That us focus starts expanding. You start seeing beyond just the one group. You start seeing the greater picture. Your heart comes online as your guide. Thereby, the ego brain gets the gift of sitting in the car seat, because the heart actually carries a much greater seed of wisdom within it than the brain. And when you say yes to that heart, the moment comes when your consciousness is pulling you into that experience that we were talking about earlier, when your consciousness is the moment to expand beyond your perceptions and you touch. Sometimes just once. It's like putting your foot in and moving it out.
Yeah.
But you go beyond and you start touching the all that is. You start having a sense of peace and a spiritual joy that transcends the emotional body. It's the one that can never be taken away because it's a knowing. And this brings us back to that word awareness, because when that awareness ignites, which often it's in our spiritual activism that it ignites, we then move into, there's 3 steps to our evolution of consciousness, and it all begins with awareness. And so we've been playing with this word through this entire show, and I really want to kind of bring it there because it is through our awareness that we begin to have conscious experience, meaning that once we are aware, then we are conscious of the experience we are having. We are able to hold into that law of instantaneous manifestation. We are no longer victims because we are literally instantaneously receiving divine inspiration to create our life experience. And this can only happen when we jump into an all that is focus, because there is no longer an ulterior motive guiding. It is just the consciousness that is offering us the blessing of continual expansion. And that's a really critical moment, because in order to move into ascension awareness, it means that you actually are remembering yourself beyond this limited moment.
Yes, you're remembering yourself as a soul,
Yeah.
not just a body and a personality.
Yeah.
And this is where that context gets expanded. The threshold between an activistic consciousness and what we refer to as ascension awareness, meaning the greater contextual understanding,
Yeah.
the ability to move out of just loving me and my family, but also loving other beings and the earth, to the global family, to be able to recognize that is a more all that is focus.
You know, for me, it's the epitome of forgive them, they know not what they do. Love them, they know not what they do. And I always go back to one of my other favorite beings, Krishnamurti, who said so beautifully that it is until you wake up or until you become aware, right? Until then, you are not responsible. Now, what Krishnamurti was saying there, it's not that you are not responsible for your actions. It is not that you do not have all of the checks and balances of living in this type of experience. What Krishnamurti was alluding to is that in that moment of awareness, in that moment of awakened presence, in that all that is focus, you become the captain of your ship. You are responsible for the way you are now perceiving and thereby creating. You are no longer a victim if you are responsible. To be responsible means that you have transcended that victim triangle. You are no longer living in that victim, abuser, rescuer. You have become that beautiful teacher, mentor, healer. And for each time that you remember the truth of that divine presence within you, you become the ignited experience of your consciousness, which illuminates others to do the same.
Yes.
It's not going to be about proselytizing in words. It's about living your best life by simply relaxing enough to allow the true you to lead it, to become responsible. It's a blessing.
Well, and as we grow, or better said, evolve.
Oh, that's it.
We evolve into ever-refining consciousness.
Yes, so we have one more to go.
There's a wisdom that comes in. There's also a recognition that we are relying on our inner guidance and our heart, because to evolve means we're also letting go of something. So,
and that we're okay with that.
And yeah, it's like you graduated from kindergarten to elementary.
It's like, thank you
graduated
for
from
the
high school.
lessons, right?
You know, and so there are graduation points where sometimes, you know, your values are going to shift. Your career may change. Your friends may change, because those folks were holding one level of consciousness that you now find less compelling.
And they're going to find you less attractive to
you're going to be
them.
less attractive to them.
We call them partners in pain, right? As your pain releases, those who can't release their pain don't want to be around someone who's happy. Okay, be happy. At some point, they'll see how happy you are, and they'll want a little taste of what you're doing.
Because your joy is a signal from your soul that you're doing what you need to be doing. And this is why the great masters are always depicted with that beautiful, sublime smile. There is a peace, a bliss, a joy in that consciousness.
Well, that sounds like ascension consciousness. And of course, that brings us all the way to the top of our pyramid. Because when you hit that level of ascension awareness, that's what ignites your mastery presence, your higher self, your ascended presence to fully kick into high gear. Because we are constantly evolving through the energies of awareness, experience, choice. The question is, are we consciously evolving through that, or are we just like a gerbil on a wheel? And we're just running through awareness, experience, choice, and we're not even aware of what we're aware of. And this is the blessing of having consciously moved into that ascension awareness, all that is focus, where our peace cannot be taken away, where our joy is not anchored in our emotions. And through that depth of that awareness, which gives us more experience, which gives us more choice, which gives us more conscious awareness, we eventually arrive into full ascension consciousness, which transcends the drama, transcends all of the chaos, holds in that beautiful divine presence, that bliss state of honestly releasing the fear, releasing the self-doubt, because you know immutably that you are an infinite being that is in this beautiful experience right now. And, Shri, I want to jump in. We were talking about your story earlier, and I just want to jump in that some of you may be saying, well, yeah, that's well and good, but how do you know? Well, in my case, I actually did have a profound near-death experience way back when, in 1989, and I died of cancer, and I was clinically dead for 4 minutes. And it was one of those experiences in my life that was obviously meant to be, because that was that propelled me. I was born very clairvoyant in a family that absolutely thought I was the devil, that shut me down, that gave me all of the messages that you don't want to hear as a child, that, when people would come over for dinner, instead of the mind your P's and Q's, mine was, and don't make my guests cry by telling them what their dead grandparents are saying, and when I just thought that was normal. So I did what most of us do. I took my consciousness and collapsed it down so that I could navigate a world that just did not support what I was at that time. And it was after I died in 1989 that not only did all that come back, it came back in ways that I could not deny. Yeah. Even though I was so stubborn and so committed, it took me another 11 years to accept it. Because in 1989, very few people were talking about near-death experiences, much less what had happened. And in my case, what did anchor during that near-death experience was the absolute knowing that we are, all of us, limitless, expansionary beings that are part of such a greater experience than this one limited little slice of time in a world where time expansion and time fluidity is now really becoming almost commonplace accepted, because, Einstein talked about this a long time ago, and this is not woo-woo. And so when we can be here now in our knowing of our infinite creative nature, when we can release the doubt, when we can allow the consciousness to lift, the solutions just show up. There is this lack of focusing or preoccupying or worrying about something, and we begin to adapt to just a constant stream of inspiration. Imagine a constant stream of inspiration. Yes. That is the capacity of you. That is your consciousness. Imagine that in your life right now.
And that happens as we surrender the individualized ego and recontextualize ourselves through direct experience of the greater vastness of your soul, of the universal energy that you represent. And I'm being kind of deliberate not to use words that correspond to any one belief system, because this is universal. It underpins all of them.
All.
And so on another show, we'll talk a little bit more about that. But for right now, what I want to leave you with is that we are all on a journey of ascension, meaning we are lifting, evolving, and expanding. And whether you look at that through the context of emotional growth, which is part of it, physical growth, which is part of it, wisdom growth, we are all naturally evolving and ascending into more perfect versions of who we are.
With every breath. And I invite you with all my heart, please visit Shri, S-R-I-and-A-N-D, Kira, K-I-R-A.com. Learn more. Jump over to YouTube, watch the videos, join our channel, Official Shri and Kira. And guys, you have this. You're expanding. You're exploring. What's ahead for you this week as you explore the mystery of your divine life? And we look forward to meeting you right back here next Sunday as we dive into another amazing moment with you.
Thanks for being with us. We'll see you next week.
Namaste.
Thank you for joining us at Shri and Kira Live. To have your questions answered, send us an email to guest@shriandkiraradio.com and check out more information at shriandkira.com. See you next week. Namaste.